Okay, I'm going to share the screen. Share. All right, so okay, so in this example here, like I said, we're going to get into the and the rest of the time that we have for today, get into our environment. You know, some of you already know how to do this because we did this all the time in 520, but I want everyone just to see it once. So we are going to, let me minimize this one and that. And this one. Okay, so I think I was creating a folder. Yeah, so go ahead on your desktop, create a folder. So I called it ITS 530 DL, and then it's 2024. I'm actually going to rename that. Okay. Just so I can read that a little bit better. Okay, so you can give it whatever name you want. This is just a folder where you're going to have your programs. Okay, so we'll be using Jupyter Notebooks here. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I already installed Anaconda. So you go to that link, download it, run everything. So you go here to start, you can click on all apps, and then you should have something like Anaconda 3. Then you're going to click on Anaconda prompt, which is usually how I like to start things. I have not built this environment, so we're going to build it from scratch together, right? Okay, so this is when you see the base here, it means that you've already installed Anaconda on the prompt. So now we can use Anaconda commands. So I'm going to do conda environment list. If you want to know where I'm getting all these commands, I actually have a file for them here. So you can just make a note of that URL. And I have a file in that there called more common conda commands. All right, so you can just use those. Okay, any questions about this? These are like common Anaconda commands. All right, so what I'm gonna want to do is conda create -- name pi35 Python 3.7. So I'm trying to think here, but I think this will run on 3.7. That's usually a thing that might be a challenge sometimes, but you can always just destroy that environment by using. So actually, maybe I should talk about this. So if you want to create a new environment, you type conda create -- name. You can give it any name that you want, such as pi37 underscore GPTs or something like that. And I usually like to specify the Python version that I'm going to be using, and then I install the programs that I need later. Okay, one of the libraries, I haven't said this, that Hugging Face has for reinforcement learning through human feedbacks is called the TLR library. So the only requirement for that library to run is that it only runs on Python 3.8. Right, so we'll have to create a special environment for that at some point. All right, once you've created your environment, you can activate it by typing conda activate and the name. You can, when you want to exit out, you say conda deactivate. Now, let's say that you created an environment with 3.7 and you realize, you know what, I actually need a 3.8. So you can just remove that environment, get rid of it, so you don't have such a long list, and you say conda environment remove -- name and the name of the environment. And you can just scratch it out. I usually like to do conda environment list always to remind myself of what versions I have, and then I select the one that I want to use. And then as far as installing, this is an important note I will say. I don't, in general, like to install anything using conda. Okay, I like to install everything using pip. I don't recommend installing some things in conda and some things in pip. There may be some dependency issues where it installs not the correct version. So I definitely recommend just use pip, as I will demonstrate for installing your libraries. Any questions about that? All right, great. All right, so now I'm going to demo. This is the demo part. So as I said, you can find these commands here. Hopefully it'll be recorded on the video, but also it's on the GitHub, and just find the Unix Python scripting folder where I have some common commands such as this. All right, so now we go back to the prompt. I will be using, in general, I like to use Jupyter notebooks. I don't like to write like the Python and then run it, because then I don't, you have code, but you don't know what's going on. So I like using the Jupyters. All right, so Conda environment list. I kind of like to just see what environments I have. I probably have several in here. All right, so there's the ones that I was using last semester from 520. I'll probably get rid of those. Fast AI, you can see I created one just for that. I created one for Hugging Face. In general, I like to, they may have dependency issues, so I like to create different ones. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and we're actually going to create a new one. So Conda create, I'm going to call it, so -- name, Pi37. This is just like probably a convention I saw somewhere, or I've just used it, but you can give it any name that you want. All right, I just like to see what version of Python I'm using in the name. And then if it's like the class, I'll say like 530. And then I'll say, in this case, this is Hugging Face. So I'll just say, okay. And so that gives me the information on what this environment is for, what it has, and such things. All right, so the next thing is, if we look at the command, we say conda create -- name, the name, and then the Python version. So I like to start with 3.7, although I think a lot of people will use 3.8, 3.9. So I'm going to say Python equal 3.7. Oh, here, sorry. All right. Yeah, so that's kind of what I would do. I'm going to hit enter there. Takes a minute. My computer's a bit slow, so you guys will always be a little bit faster. All right, so our goal is to get a GPT to answer questions. So you can go play with it. So we'll need to install the transformers module. So just follow kind of the code that I posted there. But let's give it a minute. Now, if you're using the desktops, I'm not sure if when you turn on the desktop is turned off, if all the libraries go away. So you'll just have to do this every time. If you're using the desktop, I do recommend, if you're going to do a master's, and you're just starting, get a laptop. That's probably make the investment. If you're making this large investment in school, make the investment of a good laptop. And Windows is fine. Nowadays, it used to be that we had to use Linux or Mac. For AI, now we can just use Windows perfectly fine. All right, so hit Y here. It's installing some basic things. So, and then give it a second there. So it's really just, it's like the default Python and some installation. So as I said, you don't have to create an environment every time. Certainly I won't. This will be my environment now, at least for a few weeks, as we're using Hugging Face. But we will have to install libraries all the time. That's a very common thing. So initially I like to install just PyTorch and Jupyter. That's it. So those are the few things that I install in the command line. And then after that, I go to the Jupyter and just install from it. Questions? Everyone with me? Okay, great. Awesome. All right, so now you can just copy this one, or you can type it up. Either way is fine. Okay, so I'm gonna do conda activate Pi37 ITS 530 HF, which is my Hugging Face environment. All right, and you can tell that this no longer says base. Now it says this. So now you are in that environment. At this point, I do recommend that you move to the folder. If you do dir, I need to go to the desktop. And then I'm going to do dir. And it should be that 2024 one. So I'm going to CD into ITS 530. DLA 2024. Okay. Okay, so we should be in there. CLS in Windows is for cleaning the screen. I can do ls dash, oh, sorry, not ls dash L, that's Linux. CLS. dir. And I have no files here, but this is where our files are going to live, our Jupyter notebooks, etc. Remember, other things that we might be downloading. All right, so then when I say I'm going to use pip, I literally mean this. So in Anaconda, you have this function pip, what I recommend that you use for installation. So pip install. And I usually just like to start with Torch. Torch actually will install a lot of things that, off the bat. So go ahead and run that one. And that's PyTorch basically. Again, remember this thing I said about the models. The models are large. So, be cognizant of that you're going to start filling up your computer quickly, especially if you have a small hard drive. So you can delete them, actually. I would recommend, if you were just playing with something, delete it. All right. All right, while it's doing this, I guess it's installing Torch. The next thing I will do is install Jupyter. But let's go back to the example we're gonna do. So the example I want to do, well, actually, I'll show you. So let's go to the table of contents. And we want to do, a GPT, right? So we'll start with that. So then click on the RLHF, right? As I said, and it should be, yeah, this one. So general pipeline for RLHF. So this is the one I was showing before. So here I've added, I usually like to do these as comments. It's basically all the pip installs that I did to get this thing to work. And by default, the only ones I've done before this are Torch and the Jupyter, obviously, because I'm there. All right, so let's go back to the still thinking. Okay, great. So it's done. Now the next one is going to be the Jupyter. So you can do pip install Jupyter. Okay, so just like that. Hit enter. Let's give it a minute there. A lot of files. Okay, so, okay, perfect. So it's done, right? It installed. I'm going to do CLS. Now, usually when you're doing this, you want to look for like errors and things like that. but I didn't see any errors. So now you can just type, so again, we are in my folder where my files are going to live, right? And then you want to do Jupyter Notebook. Okay, and this is going to open up the Jupyter Notebook. That file will be stored in this folder that we're currently in. And what we want to do here is now start building our program. Okay, so it should automatically open a browser and show us. Okay, while it's doing that, I'm just going to copy. So now I'm going to be using the code here probably. Yeah, here. So of this, you don't need to install all of these, okay? Especially like these two. These are actually deep speed, and accelerate are actually modules or libraries that Hugging Face has created for multiple GPU processing, right? So that they're for that. For accelerating the training. So certainly right now you don't need to worry about that. And you don't need to worry about even data sets because we're not going to be downloading any data sets. We're not, we would use data sets if we were fine tuning or something like that. All right, so really all we're going to use currently is this command pip install transformers. Okay, so you can copy that one. Okay, so I think maybe it opened it already. Yep, there it is. All right, so that's my Jupyter Notebook. That's what Jupyter Notebooks look like. Okay, they're very common. So now you can see there's nothing here. So we're going to go ahead and create a new Jupyter Notebook. So you click on New, click on Python 3. Okay, and it's going to open up our Jupyter Notebook where we can do our development. I usually right away just like click the plus here so I can create several cells. I usually then do like a little note here. So I will say like, hello world. Hello world, I am GPT-2. Okay, unleashed on the world. All right, so there you have something, little example of what we're doing. You're going to hit cell type, click markdown. This makes that cell no longer a code cell, and instead it's just a comment. You can add equations, text, figures, images, whatever you want. Okay, now the next step is I do recommend that you rename this. So I'm going to go to File, click Rename. And as I said, I'm going to call it Hello World GPT-2. Okay, so that basically is your, where you want to start probably, especially if you're using Hugging Face transformers. So now we don't have Hugging Face transformers. We want to install that. So you can install programs from cells in Jupyter Notebooks. You just type the little exclamation there. So if you can see that, that's an exclamation. And you do pip install transformers. This shouldn't take that long, hopefully. So click run. Give it a minute there. And now it's going to that Hugging Face thing that we looked at in the beginning. And it's downloading that whole transformers library, which, as I said, is open source. And if you want to build your own, start there. Okay, so let's give it a minute. While it's thinking, all right, let's go back to the example. So I actually have way too many things open here. I'm gonna close this one. I'm gonna close that one. Close this. Leave that one. Close this one. We don't need this one anymore. Don't close these two. Okay, so all right, so let's take a look here. You want to take a look at everything, make sure there are no errors. So if it's like this, and usually it says like successfully something, right? And also an important thing is to look at the little circle here. If this is solid, it means that it's processing. Once it's like this, it means it finished. And you look at your output, make sure there's no error. So this tells me that probably transformers was installed correctly. So that's good. Now I just add a comment. So this allows me to like put this on my GitHub and remember next time what are the programs that need, or the modules that need to be installed. So I like to also do the run again so that that output goes away. Okay, and then, but basically I'm telling myself that it's installed. Hit save at this point, and now we want to proceed. We should have transformers now. So we're going to go ahead now and try to run our program. So as you can see, I'm working with my student on this. And so we've been developing some of it for the RLHF, but really we don't need all these libraries, right? So usually you want to have matplotlib, pandas, torch for some issues. But really for today, we just need transformers, and we only need a few of these. We don't actually need a lot of them, but actually this is a good example of all the functionality that's available. So what they have done is they sometimes have a GPT, right? But they added a layer, and that layer does so that it instead of it generates text, but then that text somehow is converted into one value, like a score. So they add these heads to the transformers. So basically, they make it so easy that they'll just say something like, oh yeah, this is a GPT with a head. And so you download that object. And so that object then already has that architecture so that you don't have to do it from scratch. So there's a lot of variations of this. So for instance, here, just gonna look at what they have. So they got, all of these things are from transformers. There's pipeline, there's auto tokenizer, there's trainer, for instance, trainer arguments. Then we have one called auto model for causal language model. You see, that's one of those things that has heads at the end. Then they have things like auto model, pre-trained model. They have a GPT-2 LM head model. You see that? So this is what I was saying. So it's like, imagine in the simplest term, you have a deep learning algorithm with 12 layers, but then there's a 13 fully connected layer of inputs and outputs. And they did some special processing there. So that's why these are handy, because you may want, these are common things that people want to do. They want to have these heads, but that's what they're called. Whatever you add after the normal layers, you usually call it a head. So it's like but it's really just another linear layer of inputs and outputs, as we learn in 520. But they're already like, you can get those architectures just by invoking modules like this. GPT-2 tokenizer, GPT-2 model, auto model for causal. I think I have that one repeated, and so on. There's more that you can have. Okay. So for our example, I believe we are going to use, so let's look at where we have that. So we don't have to copy all those libraries. I mean, sometimes it's easier just to do that, and I do that, but this function actually is pure Python, really. Oh, we're going to need JSON here, probably. I think JSON is needed because it's probably the format that comes out of pipeline. So pipeline, which is a transformers function, likes to produce things in a JSON format. And you guys are familiar with that. I think you've done that quite a bit. All right, so let's go over here. So let's add it right about here. Generate function right there, right? Or generate examples. So this will take, okay, I need set seed. Generator, I will create. This is a dictionary. Enumerated is already available. But there's JSON here, JSON dumps. Okay, so we're going to need that library. Okay, so I added that function. Now, keep going. Okay, so here's my model GPT. So I need this code for sure. Okay, so I'm going to add a little code here in get GPT2. Okay, we're going to do the cell type equal markdown, run. Now you can do this. All right, so here we're specifying that we want GPT-2. We're going to need pipeline. Okay. And then we need, obviously, the tokenizer. So you always need these tokenizers, as I explained before. So again, we're going to create tokenizer. We're going to need auto tokenizer from Hugging Face transformers, from pre-trained GPT-2. These things are actually for the other things. So let's comment them out for now. I want to keep this as simple as possible so that it's not confusing. Okay. So let's go ahead now and we want to try, this is basically the hello world. We want to try the GPT-2 and generate some text. Okay. And you guys can type whatever you want there, obviously. And that should be it, right? That should be it. So this tells us that we definitely need auto tokenizer. We need pipeline. Yeah, that may be it, actually. Because pipeline will take care of getting the model. So then let's go back to get the libraries. Set seed we do need. So that's that. Yeah, I think that's all we need. Control copy. And that's my library right there. Okay. So hopefully that's all we need. So I'm going to get rid of these two cells, cut them out. All right. So now let's run it. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hit run here. We already installed transformers, hopefully. Cross your fingers here. See, the dot is dark, right? That means that it's running. It's a lot of code, so it makes sense that downloading a lot. Did it finish for anyone? For you? Yeah, my computer's just slower. Oh, okay, it finished for me as well. All right, so let's go ahead. Now let's add, let's the function generate examples. Remember, this allows you to send several prompts and get several answers, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and hit save. I'm gonna hit run. Okay, that's already there. Now comes the getting the GPT-2 part. Okay, this might be pretty large, so let's see how it reacts. So notice I'm telling it I want GPT-2, and it's gonna be in the pipeline for text generation. So hit run. Okay, so downloading a config.json file. So this will become very common. Okay, so transformers, GPTs, etc., require a lot of parameters, like the batch size, the number of layers, the number of this and that, number of heads. So usually it's so many that we have this construct called the config file. And it uses a type of JSON format that seems to be what Hugging Face decided to do for all their for everything. And so since we want GPT-2, it's going to give us the config already filled in with all the default values. Okay, so to the point that we don't even have to look at it. But if you were doing this from scratch, you have to pay very careful attention to what's in that config. Make sense? Okay. But here it's just taking care of everything for us. Notice it took a while, or it's taking a while. to download all the things that it needs. All right, it finished. Great. So now it gave us a warning here. I don't believe it's an error. It's just saying Xformers is not installed correctly. If you want to use memory efficient attention to accelerate training, use the following command. Now, we're not fine-tuning anything that's massive, right? So here we can ignore this kind of thing. Obviously, once you start doing homeworks and mini projects that are taking nights, several nights, you might say, you know what, I'm going to look at this Xformers thing. You want that acceleration because it becomes important. You can run this a second time, and the second time it won't give you that many green things or outputs because it caches things. So one thing that's really nice about transformers is that it's got this caching system. So it knows when something has been downloaded, and it'll check first and doesn't download it again, so it doesn't massively take up your resources, basically. All right, so the bullet is now not solid. So now let's proceed with the tokenizer here. And this tokenizer, it's actually not even something that we're using here, but I'm just showing in some scenarios you need to do it. Pipeline just took care of it for us in this case, okay? But it is the same tokenizer. That I can tell you is the same. So if you need it outside, you can have it. All right, I think it finished. So now comes the moment of truth, right? We're going to check to see if it gives us an answer. So I'm going to go ahead and run it. Oh, name seed is not defined. Did I not define? Okay, so I did set seed. So I'm missing a variable. I probably have it in my parameters. So I just gave it 42, which, as everybody knows, the answer to, what is it? The meaning of the universe? Something like that. Okay, so I usually like to have a cell here called for parameters, so that it's quick for me to be able to find. So now you can just hit run. That basically adds it into like the memory space. So now we can proceed once again over here. Where did we do set seed? Oh, it happens in the generate function. So where does generate get called? Here, okay. So we should be good. All right, so now let's save it, hit run again. Max length is not defined. Okay, so this uses max length. Okay. All right, so this is important actually because max length determines, if I remember correctly, the size of the output, right? So max length here, if you notice, I have 3 max lengths, 50, 1024, 550. I think I was just playing with these when I was working this example. So take a smaller one first. But I guess you can generate a lot of text, right? If you want that book about the weather, you know, try this. Okay, so now go ahead and add it here, right? So max speed 50. So again, now it's in memory. So let's try it yet again. Number of return sequences. Okay, I think that's probably 2. Okay, so that seems to be the last parameter, I believe. So again, add it here. So do you need 2 sequences? Well, for RLHF, you do, right? Because you wanted a GPT that gives you 2 answers for a specific prompt, and then we're going to rate them. So in this case, let's be consistent and stay with 3, or 2, sorry. Remember, this is all happening in the generate function, not in the pipeline function. So this is something that it's code that you have defined. Now, for those of you that had questions about your coding background, I mean, this is as complex as the code gets. I mean, there's a lot, and processing the data is maybe just large, a lot of things, steps, but it's not like super advanced. Okay, so hit run here. Run it again, run it again, run it again. let's try it again. I'm going to save it. Okay, so it's thinking there. Let's give it a minute. It's doing inference, okay? Remember, we are not pre-training. It's a pre-trained GPT. Okay, I forgot JSON. Need to add that. It's not a fine tune. We're only doing pre-training. So I'm missing the JSON library, which that one I had identified before.
This is import.
Yeah, import JSON, right? This is why sometimes it's handy just to copy all the libraries. You don't have this. But anyway. So JSON, let's add that one. Okay. So once again, let's try. Okay, so it's thinking. So here we have an AI. You hear all this talk of AI and it's going to kill us all and whatever, right? Well, this is the AI that everyone's so afraid of. Just a bit smarter, better weights, more weights. But this is the AI that's going to kill the world. Right? Really, what AI is a file full of weights. Like a text file or something. Where this layer, this weight, this is the value. This layer, this weight, this is the value. That's what you're afraid of, or some people are terrified of, apparently. A file. Okay? A large file, but a file. Anyway, all right, so that's it. I mean, it worked, I believe. So yeah, welcome to Hugging Face Transformers. You have a GPT-2 in your hands, which is now, this is the hello world of this realm. And what I encourage you to do now is just analyze what happens. So our function generates two answers given a prompt. So a prompt is this over here. How is the weather? And then the answers are basically what it's giving you here. So notice that you can control how many you get. You can control the size of them and such things as that. So let's look at the first answer. So now we're going to think of you're the rater, right? You've been hired to do reinforcement learning through human feedbacks. So it says, how is the weather? So answer number one, how is the weather? The first rule in the law is in the summer, bring sunshine. In winter, bring sunlight. Always bring a glass of water. In spring, take your children to play on their own. In the spring, so what? Okay. Now let's look at answer number two. How is the weather? What was your favorite sport? And then how would you like to play hockey? And you will play it again this time next year. I think our game has a lot of things to get better, but I think hockey. All right. Now, one question though. If you're a rater, which one of these two would you rate higher? Answer one or answer two? Answer one. That's it. Yeah, go ahead.
I gave it like, when will it snow this week as a question, but then my answer to it's similar to what you got. So how is that? Like, how does that work?
Well, I gave you an example where I gave it like 15 questions and I gave different answers. So what did you do?
I asked the question was, when will it snow this week? The answer one is different. It said something that last weekend in northern part of the state it was overcast and stuff. And answer two is similar to what you got.
What was your favorite sport? Yeah, I don't know. I asked the GPT. I honestly don't know. It's a generative model. I mean, we can dig into the generate function to see if something is being changed, right? So here let's look at it. So we've got the examples, right? We've got from prompt and prompt list. We've got the generator, which is this one, right? And we give it the prompt, the maximum length, and the maximum return sequences, right? And then we just use generator. Generator is, so this is a generate example. So generator is model GPT generator, which is the pipeline. This is Hugging Face. And they're not doing anything to it except facilitating the GPT to do the work. So it's just a GPT doing what it does. If we look over here, we get result. We create this dictionary. then we enumerate the result, and in the dictionary, we've got the generated text. All we do is we strip it, like clean some blank spaces, things like that, get the answer, and the answer gets assigned to the index answer 1, answer 2. That gets assigned into example dictionary. It's appended, and then you just dump the JSON. That's it. So we haven't manipulated in any way. So to answer your question after I've read this, that's the GPT doing something. So what I can do is try to replicate what you asked it. So what was the question you asked it? When will it snow this week? Question. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit save. All right, so when will it snow this week? It says last weekend in the northern part of the state, it was overcast. In November, above 100 degrees. Even then, summer can be quite harsh. Won't snow in all areas this year, and it's a question. Second question is, what was your favorite sport? And then how would you like to play it next Sunday? Email someone there or follow him on Twitter. Okay, so is this answer similar to your answers? You got also the... But it started with what is your favorite sport or something. Yeah, what happens is sometimes these things have a tendency to always start in the same way. And then they start drifting. So that's a GPT. It just generates text. It's almost like a parrot where it just says what it hears. It doesn't quite understand. So this is why GPTs sound like they're saying real things, but everything they're saying is fake. That's a guarantee because they don't have a sense of what they're just. It's a sequence, right? I say this and I'm going to say this, and it just. One nice thing is to make it. We only have 2 minutes left, but you can make this bigger. So maximum length, you can make it 150. Run it again. Takes a bit longer. Okay, and then and it generated some text in there. Answer 2 is actually pretty short. Answer 1 is a bit longer. When will it snow? What was your favorite store? And then how would you like to play it next Sunday? And then email. Yeah. And then the first one says, well, when will it snow again? So it is saying kind of the same question. So yeah, you want to give it a variety of prompts, many prompts, and then you want to give it really good answers so that you can start to fine tune it so that the weights change to produce better results. That's the whole point, right? We want to drift, or we want to like nudge this in a certain direction. Okay, but anyway, we'll come back to this topic. We will play with other models. I encourage you to go home and play with this, whatever. Ask it profound questions about your existence, whatever you want. And and then that's basically it. So that's basically the class for today. This was just an intro. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what this course will be about. Just keep in mind, we'll cover also image related things in the second half of the class, but we are starting, at least the first half of the course will be in text and this idea. All right, so anyway, so you know how to start your environment, you know how to load at least GPT-2, and then we'll go from here to other topics next week. Okay, all right, so I'll stop the video and we'll